What is up, Pitt fans? Thank you so much for tuning in to Inside the Panthers on YouTube. My name is Steven Thompson, coming at you with another Inside Pitt practice report. It was a huge day on the South Side. We talked to a lot of new guys, including new Pitt offensive coordinator Kade Bell. That's right, he is alive. He is a real person. We have proof of life that Pitt's new offensive coordinator is real. We talked to him, met with local media for the first time about 2 months, coming up on 2 months. Since he was hired, and he meets with us in Pittsburgh for the first time. He's been off on the road recruiting. Now he's got a big task ahead of him, getting this offense on the same page and working with them through spring practices. It was a really interesting interview. It lasted about 25 minutes. He answered a lot of questions. He was, funny. He was personable, a lot of energy. We'll see how he coaches, but it at least seems like the Panthers got the guy that that fits their philosophy, the direction that they want to go in as an offense in 2024, and a guy who's really going to change things quite a bit. We also heard from Pat Narduzzi and 4 new transfer Panthers as well. We'll touch on those guys throughout this video a little later on. But, it was all about Kade Bell today. And how could it not be? I mean, it is technically National Signing Day, but the Panthers only signed 2 players today, a 3-star Tyreek Robinson, a receiver from Louisiana, and then a late addition, a 3-star tight end from Georgia. That's Malachi Thomas. You can read about those guys on InsideThePanthers.com. But today was all about Kade Bell, and we learned a lot about him as a person. It was a really interesting interview that I recommend you go watch on our YouTube. It has been up there for a little bit now, but um, he talked about his journey, talked about his philosophy as a coach, just how he likes to treat players, how he likes to interact with players, and just his journey to getting to Pitt. He even got emotional at one point talking about the influence his father had on him, the confidence his father showed in him when they were at Western Carolina, and Bell's only 24 years old, but getting promoted to offensive coordinator and play caller. It was an really interesting 25 minutes we spent with him, and I would absolutely recommend checking that out on our YouTube. But I'll hit you with kind of my takeaways and what I learned about him. But we learned a lot about his scheme, and I feel like he threw around a lot of buzzwords guys did all day. Fast, tempo, score, space, playmaker, speed. A lot of stuff that you maybe know already or maybe expected Bell to throw out there or wanted to hear from him. But I think you can kind of coalesce all these things into a couple major points. The first is, I think, the aggression. I think this was a moment for an aggressive change for Pitt at offensive coordinator, even going back to when they fired Frank Signetti and then brought Kade Bell in. This is as we touched on maybe previously when he was hired on this channel, it's a different move. It is a very different direction for Pat Narduzzi and for Pitt to go in, just because Bell likes to play up tempo, because he likes to throw the ball so much. Just some of the tenets of his offense, which he says are malleable, he says he can turn to when they're needed, turn away from when they're not needed. But the central tenets and the kind of defining themes are very different from what Pitt had last year and has had at different points under Pat Narduzzi's tenure. He's different, and like I said, it was the need for an aggressive change, and they got an aggressive guy with that aggressive change. The other thing is, kind of to go along with the aggression is the tempo. Speed is obviously a big part of what Kade Bell likes to do. It's what his offense thrives on, and I think he believes that when you play faster, uh, you get opponents to think more a little bit, and you can outrun them. You can kind of sink them into the turf a little bit if you're playing faster than them. If you're making them think a little bit more. If motions are automatic for you, they're not as automatic for a team that's reacting, for a defense that's reacting to you, and that's what he wants to do. He wants to give his players options. He wants to be able to put guys in space and uh, give them the chance to make plays when the defense isn't really ready for them. And that kind of goes hand in hand with I think the last big tenet, the third and final big tenet of his offenses and his philosophy is fit. Fitting the offense to the skill sets of his players, and then fitting his players within the offense to places where they can be successful and make plays. It's less about getting everyone up to speed with his offense, I think, and more about Bell kind of figuring out where his players fit best, what they can do best, and how they can serve him, and what tools he has at his disposal and how he can best use them. And that's kind of the biggest job. I mean, that last part is his biggest job over these next few weeks as they lead into spring ball, which I would expect to start in about we can call it 6 weeks, maybe. Usually, it begins kind of uh, late March. I remember last year was kind of around maybe that same week the NCAA tournament started. I believe I got back from Dayton after the Panthers beat Mississippi State in Dayton on a Wednesday, and I went to my first spring ball practice on a Thursday. So it's a pretty quick turnaround, especially for Bell, who's been on the road for so long. He hasn't gotten a chance to really get to know his players yet, in person at least. He just hasn't gotten that much time since he was hired a couple months ago. And this is where, a lot of really important foundational work is going to go in, not just for the players who have to learn the offense, but for Bell, who has to learn about his players. He's got some guys he brought with him through the transfer portal. We got to talk to some of them today. CJ Lee, Raphael Williams, and Desmond Reed. They're all guys that Bell has coached and coached really successfully at Western Carolina. Those guys are helping their teammates kind of get up to speed with the rest of the offense. I should also mention Jeremy Davarau, the new offensive line coach for the Panthers, who is came from Western Carolina as well. So he's a guy who's familiar with Bell and his offense and what it takes to play in that. So he's got guys who can help get some of these, returning Panthers up to speed. But Bell's kind of doing a lot more work now, more hands-on coaching, I would probably say, helping guys figure out where they've got to be and where they got to line up, and just putting the finer details into place that maybe Lee and Williams and Reed and Davarau can't exactly speak to themselves. But he's got players helping him. He's got some familiar faces. And Bell's now got to help these new offensive assistants, not just Davarau, but a new tight ends coach, um, a new running backs coach as well. Kind of fit in and help everyone just kind of figure out where they fit in the offense. And like I said, when so much of the scheme is about, okay, who are these players? What are they good at? And how can I put them in positions to be successful? And how can I fit this offense and the tools and the plays that I have at my disposal to them? That means these next few weeks are absolutely critical. And then obviously spring ball, once they actually put the pads on, hit someone, line up 11 on 11, that's going to be huge as well. Speaking of those familiar faces, I mean, Lee, Williams, Reed, those guys, we got to talk to them today. In addition to former Nebraska cornerback Taman Lynham, who I think is going to be a big piece of this defense. Got some experience, long, athletic corner, who said he wanted to come to play some press man and to really challenge himself. We're going to talk about him later today. It was about the offense, about Bell, so we're going to save Lynham for another day. But all these guys, Lee, Williams, and Reed, with the focus kind of being on the offense today, said a lot of the same things that Bell did. That it's about speed, it's about tempo, it's about offense. It's about the offense moving quickly and making good decisions, making quick decisions. But they have a belief in this offense. I mean, these guys have obviously seen it work; they've thrived in it. And there's kind of a mutual belief that everyone, not just themselves, but Bell too, and these guys that came with them, can make a successful jump from the FCS, like they were playing in at Western Carolina, to the ACC, to the Power Five, to FBS. And they believe that just because, Bell has kind of instilled that in them. He's instilled the confidence in them, and made them believe that, look, this scheme can work at any level. It's just football. And with the kind of supporting cast love around him, they'll have a quarterback, they'll have an offensive line, they will have fellow receivers who stack up, physically and everything to the ACC. And Lee, Williams, and Reed, they're all under 180 pounds. I believe they're all under 6 foot as well. But these guys have a belief that if the scheme is right, if the play calling is right, that they can, and if they execute, and if they have this kind of good Power Five ACC supporting cast around them, that they can be successful as well. They'll do their part, and that this offense can make that leap, and that they can make this leap, and that Bell can as well. So even though these guys are smaller, and that'll obviously change once they get into a Power Five weight room and have the kind of support that Pitt has, I'm sure. and as well as a summer to put some additional weight on that stuff will change and they'll be a little bit bigger, but they're holding on to the tenets that Bell is trying to pass off, and that's that speed and the scheme and being able to outsmart your opponent and play a little bit quicker than your opponent will really pay dividends even with some of these smaller guys. Want to talk on? We touched on a couple specific Pitt players that uh, Bell is excited about, that I know Pitt fans are excited about, or at least interested in. The first is Gavin Bartholomew, a guy who, going back 2 years, ever since his sophomore season, Pitt fans have, bemoaned the fact that, and I mean, even Pitt coaches have acknowledged it, Narduzzi and former offensive coordinator Frank Signetti, that Bartholomew is being underutilized in this offense. I mean, only about 326 yards on 18 catches in 10 games, only one touchdown last year. I think it kind of reached a fever pitch, and it was one of the most damning indictments of last year's offense was that they couldn't perform with Bartholomew in the fold, that they couldn't make the most out of him when he was on the field. And Bell made some pretty pointed comments that's not going to happen again. That he has some designs on how to get Bartholomew the ball, how to make him a real big factor in this offense. He said very specifically that they're going to move him all around the field. He feels it's not very productive for Bartholomew to be at the line of scrimmage all the time. They want to create matchup problems for him. They want to simply get him the ball in space. I think at one point Bell said, sometimes it'll be our best play just to throw it straight to him and let him do what he does in open space. I mean, we've seen what Gavin's able to do with the ball in his hands and how he's able to run when he's got some one-on-one matchups, or even is only facing two or three defenders. He can make yards out of that, and I think Bell acknowledges that. I think he is going to make sure that part of his scheme, that part of his philosophy about getting guys in space, getting playmakers the ball, and letting your best players do their best work and do the bulk of the work, and just let them do their thing. I think that's really something that he's going to try to live up to, and he's going to try to do it through Bartholomew, who he knows is one of this team's best playmakers. He did also affirm Nate Yarnell is the quarterback one heading into spring ball. I mean, obviously, and I think he alluded to this, that there will be some competition with Christian Veyer. But that it is Yarnell's job to lose. He said that very specifically. It is Nate's job to lose. Yarnell will be in the mix, but obviously they've got a guy that they are most confident in heading into spring practices. And if you're an Eli Holstein fan, if you are a Julian Duggar or even a Ty Diefenbach fan, you're going to have to wait a minute. Bell said that, he just hasn't seen these guys play. These guys don't have, I mean, literally between them, they have zero collegiate snaps under their belt. All they've got is maybe some spring game or some practice action. So Bell wants to get a better look at these guys before he, assigns some roles on a depth chart. He feels really confident about Yarnell, number one, and Veyer, number two. But those other three, you're going to have wait a little bit before you see them in blue and gold playing some meaningful snaps. So, it's interesting to hear what he had to say about Yarnell. I mean, it's not his guy, but he was really impressed by what Yarnell showed on tape. He was impressed with how he's grown as a leader and been more vocal since he kind of got that job and took over, and since since Bell, excuse me, has met him. And so they're going into spring ball with Yarnell as the quarterback one, affirming some news that Pat Narduzzi kind of casually dropped over the summer, which, uh, Narduzzi's not really one to anoint a guy a starter very early. We've seen that over the past couple of years, but he feels very confident in Nate Yarnell, and so does Kade Bell. It was a battle I expected them to kind of drag out at least two training camp, if not all the way through training camp, and then kind of name a starter at the last minute. But Yarnell is here as the guy, and they're going to stick with him. Speaking of Narduzzi, we did hear from him as well. Most of it was centered around Kade Bell and around the offense, but there were a couple of interesting notes. The first, I thought, was something that he said at the very beginning of his press conference. His was also about 25 minutes, 20 minutes. But it was a shout out to Alliance 412, which just, man, as I've I mean, I've really only covered Pat Narduzzi and the football program full time for 2 years now, 2 seasons now, but I have never kind of seen that explicit an endorsement of NIL or that explicit an acknowledgement of Pitt's NIL arm from Pat Narduzzi or really anyone in the Pitt program since I've been following them, and especially since I've been covering them these past couple years. So that was fascinating. That was interesting. Just kind of the acknowledgement. Didn't seem like Narduzzi was gritting his teeth, but he didn't, didn't gush about them. But still, it seems like something that he's obviously got to acknowledge, and I think he understands that in this day and age. It's just an interesting nugget from this press conference that he was so willing and he was so quickly ready to acknowledge Alliance 412's efforts to recruit some guys. I mean, this was technically a recruiting event. It was National Signing Day, and here's Pat Narduzzi saying, "We thank Alliance 412 for all that they did during this process." So I thought that was interesting. But kind of to some more concrete things, he said he was sad to lose Charlie Partridge. It was really difficult to see him go. Partridge is someone that Pitt has leaned on, that Narduzzi has leaned on, and that Narduzzi is trusted for a long time. And I'll read you his exact words. The quote from Narduzzi: "Charlie's an unbelievable coach in person. Colts have a great one. Everyone's got different goals. I won't be hopping to the NFL. Not my cup of coffee. Coaching there is different than coaching these young guys. I love developing the young men we have in our room. I love getting them to learn the Pitt way. It's not the first time someone has left for the NFL in our building, but I'd be interested to see how many coaches leave for the NFL now versus 5 years ago." Paraphrasing a little bit, had to add, just a few words for context there, but some high praise for Charlie that obviously he gave in his statement when the news of Partridge's departure. He's leaving for the Indianapolis Colts, going to be their defensive line coach, taking on the same role that he had at Pitt, but just a lot. I don't know. It's a lot sappier version of Narduzzi than I think we're used to. Usually, when a coach leaves, either by their choice or Narduzzi's, it's pretty muted. It's "we wish him the best" and we're moving on. But this was much more detailed. You can tell that there was a connection there. But I think also you see Narduzzi saying that he's not leaving for the NFL anytime soon. That's not. I don't think that's shooting down any speculation or saying that he had any offers. Just that he's not going anywhere, and that's somewhat notable. He's not looking to kind of jump from college football, even though he routinely kind of, we'll call it complaining. He does. He complains, and that's fine. He complains about some of the changes that are happening. I think sometimes he feels like this sport is moving too fast, which is something that has pushed guys like Jeff Hafley away from Boston College very recently. It has allegedly pushed Bronco Mendenhall away from Virginia and from college football as a whole. So, there's plenty of evidence that the kind of nature of recruiting and NIL and just kind of the year-round recruiting and the transfer portal have kind of soured some coaches. It has extended their kind of in-season, I guess, per se, timeline. So they are kind of working calendar round. There's really no certain off season for these guys because you are constantly trying to keep everyone happy, trying to constantly keep recruits in the fold. So it's a tough kind of spot to be in, and especially when there is kind of the promise of a bigger payday in the NFL. It's hard to keep guys around. And I think the Panthers were lucky to keep Partridge around as long as he could. I know there was interest in him from the NFL level and from some other schools throughout his time at Pitt, and this time the timing was just right for him to make that jump. But Pitt fans can at least rest easy that Narduzzi's not going anywhere and not leaving for the NFL anytime soon. And he did add that he does have ideas about who might replace Charlie Partridge. He has candidates. He said multiple candidates. So we can expect some news on that time soon, especially, like I said, with the lead up to spring ball kind of running down. I mean, there's not that much time left for the Panthers kick off spring ball, so they'll need a defensive line coach in there. And I think Pat Narduzzi is planning on making that announcement soon. That's all I've got for you all. Like I said, a really interesting day learning about Kade Bell and hearing from Pat Narduzzi and some of these new transfers that the Panthers brought in. I do want to leave you with one really, really great quote, one quote that I loved from Kade Bell that I thought really kind of spoke to everything that he was and just kind of put a nice bow on who he is as a person. I mean, he was talked about. He was asked, excuse me, about kind of pace and about playing with speed versus trying to make sure that the defense doesn't get too exhausted because tempo offenses, it's kind of a double edged sword. You can catch guys off guard and you can score a lot of points, but if it doesn't go well, and you're going 3 and out in less than 60 seconds a bunch, then it doesn't really work out. But Cade Bell's not afraid of that. He likes the aggression, and he knows just this is what college football is now. You can go from, in his own words, up 21 to down 7 in an instant. You see it happen all the time. And so he had this to say about kind of continuing to stay aggressive and just I thought this kind of embodied his philosophy in a lot of ways. It's not just a personality trait, but it's practical. Quote, if you're not trying to separate from people, if you're just trying to barely win, if you're not trying to have confidence and be aggressive and try to step on people's necks, as I would say, bad things can sometimes happen. So we can expect plenty of next stepping over the next couple months and into the regular season. Who knows how this will work out? But like I said, I think Pitt got the right philosophical fit for what they're trying to do right now. But like I said, with that, I'm heading out of here. Thank you so much for tuning into Inside the Panthers on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to this video. Make sure to like this video. Subscribe to us on YouTube. That's youtube.com/@InsideThePanthers. We'll be back a little later tonight with my good friend Jack Markowski. We'll be breaking down Pitt basketball's game against NC State. That's coming up in a little bit over an hour. So make sure to tune back in later tonight and tomorrow for some more updates on Panthers basketball, and we'll have some more football content coming for you later this month, throughout next week, and then right up to the start of spring ball. So like I said, make sure to like this video, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow all of our reporting at InsideThePanthers.com. Thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.